welcome to my podcast. So, we recently had two major electronics events, and they're not specifically for technology in itself, they're not for the hardware, they're for developers. One is Google I/O, and the other one is Apple's WWDC, which is Worldwide Developers Conference. And in those events, they announce what's new in the space of their core software, their operating systems, their technology as far as native applications, and what is in the pipeline for the operating system in general. Both of these events introduced new paradigms for the interface, for the user interface, for iPhones and Android devices, new paradigms for Mac OS, I guess new paradigms across all of Apple's operating systems, and should be interesting, and I do find that stuff interesting. On the Google side, though, they split out their announcements concerning operating system and software for Android specifically to an earlier event than Google I/O this year, because Google kind of has moved away from Android as part of their core platform development, even though it is. Android is. It just exists, but their services that exist in spaces well beyond Android, their services exist everywhere, is what their business model is. It's giving you their services so that they can farm your data to provide better ad experiences across their services. So they want you to use the services. So Google I/O for the past couple of years has been about AI, which is the next big revolution in computing, generative AI, which is communicating with these machine learning models to produce generated results as opposed to just call and response information. So Google's event was probably the more interesting in the big picture, except I don't care about AI. Everybody knows that Apple has kind of failed at AI in the short term. They kind of jumped the gun on AI to try to be relevant in that space, even though they own most of the consumer computing space. They were losing relevance because they weren't up on AI. The thing is, and nobody talks about this really, but AI services, the ones that people use and are wowed by, are all hosted anyway. They're all cloud services. Local device doesn't have the kind of computing power unless it's a desktop computer to run the models that would produce the results that are interesting or sexy to you. And even then, it's not even close. These server farms that they use to produce the AI results for your silly little questions or to draw your pictures or now to create your videos, completely generated videos, it's well beyond anything that you would have at home. It's to the point that Microsoft is restarting a nuclear power plant to draw power for their AI results because it takes a lot of power and a lot of water to, even for simple AI results for a question or to create a picture. It's very wasteful, actually. And I don't like the idea of generative AI. It is very useful and is probably the next big thing in our society, the next thing that makes us a little bit dumber than we were before, because it's taking a lot of the heavy lifting off of our brain. But for me specifically, the information age has damaged me as a human being. I'm perpetually online. I'm a chronic scroller, fully addicted, but I have these creative urges as a creative person. I want to do it myself for a lot of this stuff. I don't like the idea of farming off my creativity to an AI, unless it's something that I can't do, like art. I've done a lot of, especially recently, a lot of generative AI for picture creation. The results are never what I want, but I'll take the pieces from the results that I get and stack those images to make something that is usable for me. So I have found it useful, but if it's something that I can do, like write, or think, just be creative generally, I don't want to farm that off. And I don't want the AI to choose my words for me, because my words are my own. I don't even have a great formal writing style, but it's my writing style, and I can usually craft an idea and share it fairly well. Incompletely. I have that as a shortcoming, but yeah, I'd rather do it myself. And that skill set is what is falling away. Regardless, this year, we'll start with Apple's WWDC because there's really less stuff and it's more consumer-facing, so more interesting for me. In WWDC, they announced that they were changing the commercial name of all the operating systems across the line to a different number series to match the year following the launch. So this upcoming version of iOS and of the macOS operating system, of iPadOS, and I think even watchOS will all be designated as 26. So the last version was 18, and it's moving from 18 to 26 to match the operating system with the year, kind of. Also, across the entire line, they're changing the interface paradigms, the GUI, to... And this isn't a change. So my understanding of this is that this is not an enforced change. So this won't be the default behavior. It will just be an option that you can access. But there's a new user interface paradigm where a lot of the user interface has become glass. Not just transparent, but glass-like. So it has the refraction, corner reflections, emulating the physical properties of glass throughout the interface. So for pull-down menus and icons on top of icons, everything is glassy and transparent, and it's kind of a nightmare for accessibility, is the response that I've seen to it. But it is pretty, and it does take a lot of calculation to do something like that. Apple has had the overhead beyond its competitors to do that kind of thing for years. There are always things in the Apple GUI for iOS that are basically graphically heavy because they have the overhead to do those things. That's been true for years. I think that at the high end of Android, it can be done. Like the glassy interface with genuine refraction and the interaction of glass layers, that kind of thing can be done. But it just wouldn't be done as efficiently because this is the kind of thing that Apple does. So that's interesting to people. Also, they retooled, or are retooling, because this is all pre-launch. This is, I think, the 26 versions of the operating system will come out in September, the end of September, with the launch of the new iPhones. But iPadOS is the most interesting change because iPadOS now has macOS windowing. So they've been trying to play with windowing on macOS for years. And they've come up with their own paradigms to make it work, to do split screen and to have multiple apps on screen, but none of it was traditional windowing. And people complained about it. They were like, we can't do the things we want to do on this incredibly powerful piece of hardware because the iPad has been using the same SoC as the macOS devices for a few years now. And so hypothetically, it should be able to do some of the same things. Like the entire hardware pipeline is not the same, but it should be able to do some of the same things. So with this coming version, they are introducing true windowing. It's got everybody very excited who uses an iPad and who's technologically interested, because it means you can do more primary stuff with it. They're retooling the file system as well, the access to the file system. I'm sure that it won't be the same as having hierarchical access, but evidently it's much better. I haven't looked into it to see what it looks like, but evidently it's much better, which is good. They are allowing more things to run in the background. So you can render something and then switch to another application while you're rendering, which was not a possibility before. And is a very un-Apple thing to do. I'm very curious how Steve Jobs would feel about these changes. Like, things have to advance with time, and he wanted his products to be simple, for your grandmother, so that your grandmother could do those, but also delightful. And it feels like Apple's lost its way, but also you kind of have to make these changes to stay competitive in the market. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit past a compromise to make things as complex as they are, but the core experience is still simple enough that your grandmother could use it. So I think that it's fine. And actually, these changes have me very interested in iPadOS. We do have a newer iPad around that I can take a look at these changes on when they drop, so I will definitely be taking a look at those. And then new AI integrations, because as we remember last year, they made a big push to announce that Apple AI, Apple Intelligence, was going to be a huge thing, and it just wasn't. There were many features that were announced that never came out. They called the mulligan. One of their AI services integrates to external large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini, and they're increasing that level of integration because Apple they don't have it yet. So that is still a work in progress, disappointing many because it was one of the big things that the iPhone 16 generation was sold on, is that this now supports AI. They have included some communication AI stuff that is not new to the space because Android's been doing all that for years because Google, it's in Google's wheelhouse. All that AI stuff is in Google's wheelhouse, but they're doing some call screening, like a AI call screening, generative AI call screening assistant kind of stuff, real-time translation for FaceTime chats and texts, which is stuff that Android has been doing for years and years because of Google services. But it's still interesting. It's still great that that's coming to the space. Something that I don't think was mentioned because it's not in Apple's interest is that, but it's interesting to me, is that with the new versions of the operating systems, RCS should support end-to-end encryption. That should be a pretty big thing. That and being able to react to media should be the last two things that you need for a full basic experience as far as cross-platform RCS. From my point of view, there are all kinds of other features that they include over the course of time that are important to this service and this service. RCS does 100 more things in Android to Android than it does from Android to iOS, and iMessage does 200 more things in iMessage to iMessage than it does in iMessage to RCS, or RCS Android to RCS iOS. But most of those things I don't care about. And if you're an adult, you shouldn't care about them either. Like I don't want to see a Genmoji, so I'm good. I'm good with that. But yeah, that stuff is interesting, but it's not the most interesting in the big picture. The most interesting is the million AI things that Google is now supporting. And let me just stop for a second, but this is disappointing to me that Google's entire focus is on the future of their AI services, because I'm a Google user. Chrome OS is my primary home OS. Android is my primary mobile OS. Have an Android tablet, Android phone, bunches of Android phones, and Chromebook. And of course, I have a Windows machine at home because Windows does more stuff, so sometimes you have to fall back to Windows, but not often, actually not ever in the modern time. Once Chrome OS started to support Linux applications and do it well, that was pretty much it. So when my computer stops supporting security for Windows 10, which is very soon, I'll probably just migrate to Linux Mint, which is my favorite flavor of Linux. But yeah, because Google might actually have to sell off Chrome, they're not talking about what the future of Chrome is, and that's very disappointing because Chrome OS is my jam. It's way more secure than Windows. It's very simple and easy to use, and has gotten robust enough over time that it can do pretty much everything I needed to do. So that's a little bit disappointing. All these years I've been waiting for Chrome OS to support discrete graphics, like a graphics card, and that would be the last piece of the puzzle. That's never going to happen under the current environment. So that is very disappointing to me. Anyway, Google I/O. Google has made a pretty big leap in the past year or so. They were so far behind ChatGPT in that space, and as far as users go, they're still way far behind ChatGPT in that space. But they have made a quantum leap in performance for their models over the last year, and the current version of Gemini's models they're faster for various tasks than ChatGPT's current models, and I'm sure there'll be a back and forth forever until one or the other gobbles up the entire market. But Google announced so many things. Agentic live assistance, like we have that to a certain extent, but it's gone to a quantum leap beyond that. Like if you have the Gemini app on your phone, and it doesn't matter if it's iOS or Android, the Gemini app can actually look at what you're looking at, and you can talk to it in real time about the thing that you're looking at. So not like analysis of a picture or whatever. You can have a real-time conversation about real-time things going on. You can have it analyze real-time text. The Gemini app has had a quantum leap in what it can do, and these are all hosted services, so much more important than on-device services. That's the sexy stuff, that real-time communication with those servers to do what you'd like to do. So we're up to Gemini 2.5, supports agentic task creation, which is like real-time generative AI task creation. There's a new protocol called Canvas for agentic media creation. Notebook LM, which was a big thing last year because it makes or generates realistic-sounding podcasts around the point of interest. If you feed it a bunch of information from wherever, it will parse that information and then have two people having a conversation about that information so they can hit the relevant points in a conversational manner, because that conversational manner is how some people learn. It's how I learn, because I listen to podcasts like 18 hours a day. It's a very cool service, and it's gotten less weird over time. If you ever hear AI voices generated inside of content, which there's a lot of that now, there's like a huge boom of that, where people are producing content on YouTube, where an AI voice is actually delivering the narrative, and the AI voice has gotten better by leaps and bounds over the past few months. It's very convincing. But yeah, Notebook LM, big sexy. The higher end, because the service is tiered. Some of the features are free now. They won't be free forever. But Google AI Ultra, the highest end tier of access to the Gemini services, is $250 a month. That sounds ridiculous to me, unless you're in a business or you're a coder or something where AI is part of your business. Then it sounds justified. Also, all those VO videos, those completely AI-generated videos with AI-generated dialogue that you're seeing now, that's the kind of thing that you can access at that $250 a month level. Impressive. And there's an educational discount. The AI Pro level, I think, is the cheapest level, is $20 a month. For the AI-generated video, VO3 is the current video generation model available in Ultra and for developers. Imagen 4, or Imagine 4, is the current image generation model. Does higher quality images, and it actually generates text. You know, before you try to generate some text in an image, and it would come up with nonsense. And going forward, you can actually have that text in the fashion that you'd like it. So I want a Comic Sans, and it says, "Hey, Fred was here," or whatever, and it can do that. There's, of course, audio generation. It's funny, actually. My work group, bunch of IT guys, on payday, one of the guys generated a procedurally generated song for payday. So that's my encounter with lyric generation. But it's Lyria 2 is the vocal music generation model. And for VO3 and Lyria 2, a bunch of the AI generation stuff, they're working with Darren Aronofsky from Noah and Black Swan. They're working with him to make some sample content. That's interesting. That's an interesting choice for that, because Darren Aronofsky is dark. So what kind of sample content are you trying to make? The content going forward, because the scary thing is a lot of this stuff is getting to the point where it is almost indistinguishable from reality. You know, it could fool your mom 10 years ago, but now it's getting to the point where it can probably fool you. There's an included watermark, the Synthide watermark, to identify generated content. Project Astra, that's something that Google's been working on for a while, and it's kind of rolled into their modern services. But it's their goal of creating a her-style generative assistant, more interactive, more natural language model. Something else they announced, new hardware with the XR glasses. And Android XR, I think, covers not only the VR glasses, but the AR glasses as well. So not only like a headset for immersing yourself in a created 3D space, but also something, the extension, the evolution of Google Glass into its next form, where you just have regular glasses on that can interact with the world to analyze, say, read the text off of signs, or tell you the distance between yourself and another thing, or tell you somebody's name that it recognizes from your photo library, that kind of thing. That is coming this year or the beginning of next year. Project Starline was their 3D space kind of visual conferencing service, where you could be in a room interacting with a holographic avatar of somebody who was in another room, and the advancement of that is now called Google Beam, Virtual 3D Telecom Meetings, and evidently it's amazing. That's for businesses specifically. Don't care about that so much. Evidently you can have a similar experience with Apple's Vision Pro. Inside of Vision Pro, they've improved their model of the person on the other side of the interaction, so that you can see something that almost looks like a person now, as opposed to a soft, pillowy cloud avatar that looks like that kid did in the last Thor movie. Ooh, so bad. Real-time translation's gotten better and more comprehensive. It covers more languages. Jules, that's an AI assistant for your code repository. AI Studio, which is a web tool for Gemini, has gotten streamlined. Sign-to-text AI has gotten better. And this is stuff that has been existing for a while, and it is just getting better and better every year, and I think the quantum leap of the better is this year's version of Gemini. Wear OS 6 will integrate AI features for the first time. I don't know what those AI features are going to be, and I kind of don't care. I'm sure it will be related to health tracking stuff, looking at your metrics and convincing you to do better, because that's what Apple's doing this year with the new version of Watch OS. They'll have AI that kind of pushes you through your workout. Hey, you're almost hitting your goals or whatever. Gmail is getting AI Gemini integration for smart replies. I guess they're analyzing your writing style to generate possible replies in your voice. That's that kind of thing that I don't like. I don't want that. Of course, we mentioned Notebook LM. An interesting statistic that we're ending off with here is that Google's Gemini services process 480 trillion tokens a month, and that's basically the request to do work. That individual request to do a thing, to make a change, is a token. And that's up 50 times from last year. So they have the ability to do more work, and they are doing more work. I wonder what that number is for ChatGPT. It's got to be insanely higher, like a quintillion tokens. It's something ridiculous. But yes, our future is both very bright and very dark. And you know how I started this off saying, yeah, I have no interest in this AI stuff. I use it for image generation sometimes or whatever, but I don't really need it. All that information that I just spat out at you, I tried for weeks after the events to parse and process that AI information that was completely uninteresting to me, and I could not get it. So I had to drop the information into Notebook LM and have them generate a podcast for me to listen to get this information. So yes, AI has its purpose in the modern time, and it is not my friend, but also I guess it's my friend at the same time. So those are the two big tech events. Of course, when the product launches happen, we'll be back to talk about that stuff, because that's what's interesting to me, the hardware, not necessarily these back-end services. But I am glad that they're advancing. When they integrate themselves into our lives, it's going to be so seamless and so helpful that we won't really recognize it, which isn't a danger in itself, but that's the part that's interesting. I don't find this stuff terribly sexy. I don't use AI at work ever. We have access to Microsoft's services to a certain level, but there's nothing that I do that I need the AI for. Like, I'll do a search from time to time, and Google will generate some results for that search, and that's as much as AI is useful for me at work. At home, like I said, I will generate an image sometimes. It'll never be right, and I'll have to pick and choose pieces of those images to layer in a final product to get what I want. So I am glad that the services exist, and I'm sure that they will be very useful in my future, making me much dumber as time goes on. And I think that's it for this episode. As always, you can catch me on Blue Sky and Threads at Jonathan Blade. You can chat more about AI or whatever else I'm thinking about in the moment, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for listening.